Hello and welcome to Clark Art Talks. I'm Kendra Larson. I'm the director of the Archer Gallery and the Clark Art Talks program here at Clark College. Today we are lucky to have Kanani Miyamoto here as our artist. Kanani is originally from Honolulu, Hawaii. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. Kanani Miyamoto is currently living in Portland, Oregon, where she practices art, teaches, and curates. She is an individual of mixed heritage and identifies most with her Hawaiian and Japanese roots, which is celebrated in her artwork. Miyamoto holds a Master of Fine Arts in Printmaking from the Pacific Northwest College of Art and a Bachelor of Arts in Art Practices from Portland State University. Kanani is now the arts coordinator at PAIR. So Kanani, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel weird with a microphone and stuff. Hi, are all of you art majors? Yeah? No? Minors? Few people. Anyways, you're artists, right? Well, yeah, my name is Kanani Miyamoto, Portland-based artist, born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, the island of Oahu. Most of my work is rooted in my culture and heritage, but in a more contemporary format. I received an MFA in print media at PNCA, so I'm super passionate printmaker. Are any of you familiar with printmaking? Printmakers are really like detail-oriented, right? And traditional printmaking and historically printmaking is taught through a European lens, right? With really strict rules, borders, 2-inch borders on each side, weighted on the bottom. You have to have your print signed and numbered and flat and no smudges or anything. So really particular, right? And I was trained in this way for the very beginning of my art career in school, my education, and until I got into grad school. And when I got into grad school, the prints in printmaking are also regulated in size, right? You can only go so big as your press or the paper or the matrix that you're working with, the copper or wood or anything else. But in grad school, I was really lucky, and I was introduced to Eastern printmaking techniques. So mokuhanga, Japanese papers. Japanese papers come in really big, long rolls, so there's no real size, what is it called? Size, yeah. So I really fell in love with these Eastern techniques and philosophies, and it really opened up my my practice to creating larger work. So I do really big, large-scale print installations, and all of my prints are hand-carved, hand-printed, and then I usually wheat paste them up. So I got out of that border, you know what I mean? I kind of freed myself from being stuck in a small, tiny size and space. This block was one of 3 blocks, and the block is 9 feet long. So this was a really, really huge work when it was finished. When I make prints, a lot of times I combine the screen prints, intaglio, and wood block prints, and I print them all, and I cut them all out, and I kind of work in a collage type way. And the work is not site specific in the content, but site specific in the design and how it's laid out. So I go to a location with a story in my head, and then the composition takes form when I'm collaging onto the wall. So this is my thesis work, my grad school thesis work, and that print was 20 feet tall and a little over 20 feet wide, and everything was wheat pasted onto the wall. So this is after grad school, some more prints. And I did a lot of really Asian and Eastern. So I'm Hawaiian and Japanese. And a lot of the Asian influence started to come through in my work. And I didn't know how to separate it. I mean, I didn't know how to bring it together. I always kept it separated. Oops. I use a lot of symbols, symbols from Buddhist philosophy. I really love symbols and imagery that spans across culture. This is a piece that was in a show called History's Presence, and that creature on the side is a fu dog or she dog, and it's a creature for protection. And the squares in the middle of the print, in the middle of the installation, are made up of joss paper. And joss paper is used in a ceremony to give wealth and prayer to your ancestors. So it's usually burned, that paper is burned and sent up to the heavens. But I use that paper in this installation to represent our ancestors. Oops, wrong way. This piece was also a piece for protection. I did this installation right after President Trump was elected, and the show was called Respire. And I was thinking a lot about, I was really scared and thinking a lot about how are we gonna protect ourselves. So again, the food dogs are shown there. And then I don't know if Chinese artists do this or other Asian artists do this, but in Japanese artists, when they draw or paint auspicious creatures like dragons or food dogs and things like that, they add in the pupils at the very last moment, and that represents the addition to the soul into the creature. So in this piece, I didn't include the souls in our protectors because I felt like our protector at that time didn't really have a soul. This was in that show, that same show called Respire, and again, it was really, I was really trying to put into the world symbols and images of protection. The fish represent perseverance, and fish in a lot of different cultures kind of represent abundance and perseverance. The hands in the middle of the fish are Buddhist prayer or mudra, and it's the symbol for protection. And the snakes and serpents I just always love including, and I don't like to include their heads, so they're just kind of ambiguous. Maybe they're protectors, maybe they're something else, maybe they're the evil lurking around. There's a close-up. That's a wood block print, and I really love to put in hand coloring into the wood block print, so it kind of trips people up. They don't know what it is, right? Is it a print? Is it a painting? Process is really important in my work too, so a lot of times I'll use sumi ink and paint onto the block and then carve alongside the brush strokes so you can still see that it was painted. Not as graphic as traditional wood block prints. This piece, I was thinking about ancestors again, and I had a really big beef and problem with my family and my grandfather specifically, so that serpent in the middle represents my grandfather. I don't anymore. I figured my stuff out, so I'm good now, but yeah. Down below that scroll is a bowl, and it had the joss paper that I had used previously in another installation. And that joss paper, after I did the installation, I took the joss paper outside and I burned it in that bowl, and then I brought it. I wish I could have burned it in the gallery, but they wouldn't let me. So when the installation was done, I burned the paper for my ancestors and then put it back into the gallery. There's a close-up. This is a photogravure print. So it was etched, it was painted and then etched into copper and then printed intaglio style. So it's really, it doesn't look like a print at all. It really looks like it's hand painted. And then the flowers are screen prints. But I use this wet mounting technique where with the wheat pasting, where I can do a lot of collage work on paper as well. So like I talked about earlier, early in my art career, I had a really hard time with separating or bringing together the Hawaiian and Japanese culture. And I think for mixed people, that's kind of hard because you're never enough of one thing, right? You're never Japanese enough, you're never Hawaiian enough. So it's hard to figure out that balance. And then when you start to do things that are maybe very Japanese or very Hawaiian, you get criticism, like, why are you adding that into that? That's not appropriate, that doesn't belong there. So I had a really, really hard time with that for a really long time. And I started looking to Ikebana because my imagery, a lot of my imagery and symbols that I were using were really strong in Asian influence. So I was really trying to think about how can I bring that Asian influence into the work in a different way. And I was thinking about Ikebana, and the philosophy of it is really beautiful, but also I could use that as my compositional map, So I started doing that. This is a piece called Kalipo, and it is the Hawaiian creation story. It's one of the Hawaiian creation stories. And it was in Seattle. It's down now. It was at the King Street station. It was supposed to be up permanently, but it got damaged and we had to take it down. But anyways, I don't know, can you see that kind of Ikebana philosophy and composition in this piece? So I took a Hawaiian story, a Hawaiian philosophy, and kind of used the Ikebana composition to play out the story and to really try to mix the cultures, right? And everything is symbolic. The story is really cool because it's like the Hawaiian creation story is a lot similar to Darwin's story of evolution. And creation starts from like the deep dark sea in slime, and the Kumulipo, it's called, documents living things as they develop from single-celled creatures from the sea. So these are the grasses and the flowers that first started emerging. The circles up there in the corner represent the Kamali'i, which is the star constellation that was supposedly in the sky during the creation. And I kept trying to do iterations of this creation story and using the kind of composition and aesthetic looks of Eastern Asian art, but using more Hawaiian visual elements. So there's the kalo there, which is our staple food, and also our relative. Like a really important part of Hawaiian culture is that plant. The kalo is the big, like elephant ear looking plant. And this, again, there's coral in it, there's other stories. But in this one, there's a beautiful part of the Kumulipo that talks about how similar the sea plants are to the mountain plants. So I was trying to capture that interconnectivity of the sea and the ocean. And in the Kumulipo, it talks about how the sea plants emerge, and then the mountain plants develop in order to protect the sea plants. And I think that's just so beautiful. Some close-ups. This installation was done at a Meta corporate office, and this installation really woke me up to where I saw when I was in grad school, everyone, when I did my thesis, they're like, where do you see your work? Where do you see your artwork? How are you going to get into gallery spaces and this and that? And I didn't really know. And when I did this work at the Meta Open Arts corporate building, I truly felt like I sold out. I felt dirty and gross. It was a really weird place, and I hated it. I hope that someone saw it and brought joy to their work life, but it's a really weird place. super robot-y. Huh? Yeah, I don't know. But there it is, dirty. But so I understood that I wasn't an artist who was in it to make money, right? I don't care about making money through my art. I got my MFA because I really wanted to teach. So I guess that's my point to that whole thing. So I don't care if I'm never in a gallery or if I'm a represented artist, right? To me, that's not what is important. For me, community is important, critical dialogue is important, and just like getting my culture and my story out there up into the world. A lot of my work, like I said, deals with the Hawaiian and Japanese culture, and I like to tackle a lot of issues like tourism and things like that. So this was called Industry of Aloha, and it was in the Portland building downtown. And above all of the colorful things, fruits and flowers are all associated with Hawaii and well known, right? Like Hawaiian, like a Hawaiian pizza, pineapple, right? Put a pina colada, Hawaii. But it's not. Pineapple is not even a plant that ever grew in Hawaii, right? So all of the colorful plants and flowers are associated with Hawaii, but they're very damaging to the islands and her people. And all of the plants on the bottom are all endemic and native species. And they're all kind of decaying and falling onto the ground. For this installation, I did a really cool public engagement piece where I brought in boxes and boxes of flowers from Hawaii, and I sat in a space and I made lei. And I invited people to come and sit and make lei with me. But everyone was working, so nobody had time to come and sit. But I did get to give lei to people, which is a really important part of Hawaiian culture. Yesterday was May Day, by the way. And it's AAPI month, too. But it was still really nice to be able to give lei to people and have a short conversation. Even if it was short, it was still conversation, you know. And I think it was at that point where I understood how important public engagement is, right? And being there to talk to people about the work and hanging out and having conversation. This work was pretty recent at the Salem Bush Barn Gallery, and I was really thinking about, it was called Golden Fruit, and I was thinking about plantation workers in Hawaii. My grandfather came from a plantation family. My grandfather was born and raised on Oahu, but his parents were immigrated from Japan. So I'm like 4th generation Japanese. But anyways, the crane is a really important part of Japanese culture and represents loyalty and longevity. And the crane, I talked about my grandfather earlier and how I had a really bad relationship with him, and it was just weird. As I learned more about my family and my grandfather, I learned that he was in the military and he fought the Japanese War, so he was in the 442nd Battalion. I don't know if you know the history of that, but it's pretty heavy. You know, it was all Japanese soldiers, American soldiers, fighting the Japanese. And it was really intense because a lot of their relatives were sent to internment camps, but they still fought for this country, you know. So he fought in that war, he fought in the Korean War, and he fought in Vietnam War too. So yeah, he had a lot of problems. He probably needed therapy, right? And that's probably why we all had a bad relationship with him. Anyways, the crane represents my grandfather and just the struggles and struggles yet beauty in you know, immigration and the plantation workers. This was part of that exhibit too, and I was really thinking about, this exhibit went up right after the Maui wildfires happened. So I was really thinking about how Lahaina used to be a really watery, really wet place. Kalo, that taro plant, grows in really wet areas. So there was a lot of kalo, there was a lot of breadfruit in that area. But when settlers came, pineapple, sugar, all were starting to be grown, and the agricultural industry would divert water from the native people and plants, so that they could grow sugarcane and pineapple, which ultimately led to the Maui wildfires. It wasn't a natural disaster, right? It was a long time of destroying and taking from the land. So there were 5 corporations that kind of took over Hawaii, and they were even more powerful than the American government or the British government. They're powerful because of money, and they kind of ran Hawaii like a oligarchy. Is that how you say it? But these 5 corporations are known as the Big Five, and this serpent represents the Big Five. And the serpent has 5 eyes and no pupils. So it's, the soulless kind of corporation. And 5 skulls for the 5 corporations. This is, again, thinking about Maui and the fires. Those plants in the middle are sugarcane, and it's the first sugarcane to be genetically created on the islands. And the name of the strain was Lahaina. In my work, I also do a lot of institutional critique, and I have a really big beef with Paul Gauguin. Do you all know who Paul Gauguin is? I'm getting over a cold, and sorry. I still have an itchy throat. Sorry. Paul Gauguin was a French painter. Do you know who he is? I'm glad, because that means that folks aren't teaching about him anymore. Paul Gauguin was a French painter, and he was really, he wasn't famous, and then he went to Tahiti. I don't know how to make this story short. He went to Tahiti, started kind of appropriating their culture, colors, patterns, started painting the native women, and started making it bigger. It became more famous. But he was a big-time appropriator, and he was a predator too, and he went to Tahiti and took on lots of different lovers and wives. Most of them were very, very young, some as young as 13 years old. So I do a lot of critique on Paul Gauguin in my work, and this is an etching that I did, and I full-on 100% appropriated it. It looks exactly like the painting. The colors are different, of course. But this is early in my art career. I was still a student, and I wanted to do a technique that was really, really difficult, because Paul Gauguin was revered as like an innovator and like a master of color, doing all these awesome, wonderful things, right? So I was like, I'm gonna do like the hardest technique ever and replicate the colors and stuff he did. So this is like a seven color reductive intaglio print. So I etched every layer into copper and then sanded it down, printed another layer, sanded it down. So it was really an intense process. Similar show that I did about Gauguin called Moruroa. Moruroa was an atoll in Tahiti that was constantly bombed with nuclear testing by the French government. And I was just really upset that, there are so many art shows that are showing Gauguin's work and praising the beauty of Tahiti, but nobody ever talks about this stuff, right? This was work that was in that show. Again, just kind of appropriating his work. The work on the top without color is an etching that was done by a Dutch artist. And again, Paul Gauguin this artist was one of Paul Gauguin's favorite artists, and Paul Gauguin was, again, talked about as like such an innovator and like, doing all these cool new things. But this was an artist that he was really drawn to, and it's so similar to his other work, you know. So I reproduced that etching in a wheat pasted installation, and then focusing on the spirit of the dead watching, because a lot of folks feel like that spirit of the dead was Gauguin. And there's another etching with this evil spirit behind of the Tahitian woman, and Paul Gauguin actually referred to himself as an evil spirit. So I took the evil spirit's head and incorporated it into a big installation piece. This body of work was in a show on Maui called Disrupting the Gaze, and I was really looking at Paul Gauguin's work and how the Tahitian women were viewed in his work. And for the inspiration for this work, I really took to Gauguin's wood blocks, which are not really known. So I used imagery and kind of the style of the wood blocks. And in this piece, again, lots of really heavy symbolism. The patterns on the side are petroglyphs of a woman giving birth. I don't know if you can kind of make that out. And the circles represent a piko in Hawaiian culture. We believe that we as humans have 3 piko. The first piko is our fontanelle, or the soft spot in your head, and that connects you to your ancestors. And then your piko, your navel, connects you to the present world that we live in. And then the third piko is your genitals, which connects you to your future generation. So you can't really see it in that picture, but there's 3 picos in there. And in ancient Hawaii, when children were born, the umbilical cord and all of that stuff was taken to the water, and picos were carved into the rocks by the ocean, and things were left in there. And the families would use the same pico so they would grow and grow and grow. So this piece specifically, I really wanted to monumentalize the strength of women and the ability for them to create life. Rather than Paul Gauguin just kind of seeing them as like an object or, you know, something exotic and sexual. The other side, that female figure, all of the plants that surround that figure are staples, staple foods in Hawaii. And so
What kind of foods do you have in Hawaii?
lots of different kinds of foods.
Chick-fil-A?
No, we do have a Chick-fil-A, and people really love it. We only have one on the entire island. So anyways, Paul Gauguin, I have a big beef. He's my art nemesis. I'm always like trolling him, finding out where the exhibitions are and going to see how the museums display the work and all of that stuff. I went to an exhibit in Seattle showing his work, and I was excited because his work showed alongside of a Polynesian artist who was kind of critiquing the work. So that was awesome, right? Things are starting to change. I was super excited. And then I went down into the galleries. It was at the De Young Gallery. I went down into the gift shop, and this is what I saw. And I was like, what the heck? Like, so these women, Paul Gauguin went through many, many women, all super young in age. And a lot of times people will say that they were into this relationship or whatever, but the fact is, they all left him. Nobody stayed with him, and he kind of died alone with syphilis, by the way. He died of syphilis alone in Tahiti. So anyways, Tehamana, this is Tehamana on the mug, who was 13 years old when he took her as a wife. As an arranged agreement. It wasn't like a mutual, like, I love you type thing, right? And here she is on like a crappy coffee mug, a crappy, cheap coffee mug, right? And for me, this is violence. This is violent. This is a victim. And you're gonna have your morning coffee with this young girl on the coffee? Like, it hurt my guts, you know? seeing this stuff. And so I decided to make my own swag, Gauguin swag. So some of the stickers here say, Gauguin's been perpetuating violence since the time that he arrived in Tahiti. The red and white mug has a direct quote from one of his biographies that says, I can't remember the exact words, but it says something like, indeed, I saw all of the Tahitian women ready for taking, brutally taken, something like that. But it's a pretty violent statement that he made with his own hands, writing in his biography, right? So I made these little pieces in swag, and I did a project called Shop Giving, and I kind of, like, I snuck into gallery gift shops, and I put my little arrangement there, and then I left. I don't know whatever happened to them. I don't know if anyone found them or anything, but it was fun to do. It was scary, but I don't know what they would do, right? Would I get in trouble? Because I wasn't stealing anything. I was actually giving them stuff. But there's my little swag in all of the gift shops that I visited. The postcards were the best because it took them forever to find the postcards. I was really excited, but I want to do that again because I would go back and they would still be there. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about Gauguin. Another important thing in my work is community collaboration. This is a mural that I did out in Forest Grove with the community. So it was a bunch of Pacific University students and some people from the neighborhood. We sent a call out to come and help us. It was really hard to design and collaborate in the beginning, you know, coming up with a design and idea from like 25 different people was kind of hard. But we did it, and it was awesome and fun.
Where was that building?
This is in Forest Grove.
Oh. And what building is that?
I don't know what the building is called. It was privately owned, but near a post office. Oops. That's another mural. That one was done in Milwaukee. And I worked with the Grand Ronde tribe to talk about what they wanted to see there in that space too. They wanted a native artist to do the painting, but they couldn't find one from the Grand Ronde tribe. So they called on me, and I went out to the Grand Ronde and visited their cultural center and talked to David Harrelson, who's a cultural resource manager. I'm not quite sure his title, but it was really awesome. And it was really cool to see the different ways in which we are related, right? Like thinking about symbols and signs that relate across culture, like the fish, right? But like basket weaving and all of that stuff is so important to a lot of different cultures. But for this project, I had a Grand Ronde tribal member come out and work with me, who was an artist but didn't have mural experience. So we kind of did a really nice cultural exchange plus kind of skill sharing thing with this piece. This place, I don't know how to transition. This is kind of a rough transition, sorry. How are we doing on time? Okay. This place is an exhibit that I co-curated with another Native Hawaiian artist for the Five Oaks Museum. And it happened during COVID, so it was only online, which is unfortunate. But it was thinking about the Hawaiian diaspora and displacement of a people. And we featured artists. We talked a lot about Hawaiian history here in the Pacific Northwest because not a lot of people know about it, but Hawaiians have been here since like the 1800s. And it shows up in our traditional foods back home too, which is really strange. Like we have a dish called lomi salmon, which is common at all like real luau's or like house parties, family events. Lomi salmon is always present, but there's no salmon in Hawaii. And as a kid, I was always like, this is so weird. And lomi salmon has tomatoes, onions, and salmon, salted salmon. And I was always like, this is so weird. None of these fruits or vegetables or salmon come from Hawaii, yet it's always served in the traditional field.
Did Hawaii make the Hawaiian pizza?
No, they didn't. And I talked about the pineapple earlier. So anyways, I was always curious about that. But the salmon and lomi salmon comes from Hawaiians that were coming here. They got the salmon and salted it and took it home when they went back home. They were coming here with the fur traders to help that industry, and they were valued because they were great water people. So for a long time, they've been coming. So in this online exhibit, we really featured lots of different artists, musicians, and communities that had ties to the Hawaiian Islands, but were living here. All of that stuff is still online, and there's also some really great educational worksheets and things like that for K through 12. So this is a great example of how art can really continue create critical dialogue and just be really useful in social change, right? This is one of the the supplemental educational pamphlets that were included in the exhibit. And you can get them still online. So go get them. I did this last week. So this is my big mess. This is an installation at the Patricia Reeser Center. It's unveiling this Friday. I don't know if y'all are down there or around there. It's kind of far from here, but there's going to be lots of good food, and we're going to unveil this piece. But this is a piece celebrating AAPI heritage and presence in Beaverton.
Where's the piece at?
It's in Beaverton at the Research Center. But this is kind of a glimpse into how I work. Again, all the prints, like tons and tons of prints, hundreds of prints are all rolled up, and I just kind of come with an idea or story in my head, and it just takes place and form when we're lying it out. I don't make any sketches or any designs. I just take my stuff and get crazy. It's a big mess, and I probably shouldn't work that way, and I'm really tired, and it stresses me out. But that's it. So for this piece, it was for AAPI month, right? And AAPI is Asian American Pacific Islander. And the Asian American experience is so much different than the Pacific Islander experience. Like, a lot of Asian Americans immigrated to America, so they came here, right? But a lot of Pacific Islanders have been colonized and forcefully taken by America. So AAPI month is a little bit problematic, and there should be 2 separate months. But anyways, that's besides the point. In this piece, like in the very beginning, I was really questioning how do you represent all of those people, because Pacific Island people are so diverse. There's so many different Polynesian, Melanesian, Micronesian, right? We're all different. And at first I was trying to include like little symbols and pieces and stories of each people, but then I was like, I can't do that. I can't appropriate, I can't represent a culture that's not mine. So I just stuck to what I always do, right? Stuck to the symbols, designs, and colors, and everything that just make up me and who I am. But I just finished it last night, so I'm super excited about it. I just finished that last night, those windows. I took that last night at 9 o'clock at night. It's recent, yeah. But yeah, I'm excited about it. And it wraps around the entire building. It's probably the largest installation that I've ever done. And then it crosses the train tracks to the Beaverton City Hall, which is also exciting. And in the beginning, I talked about where I saw myself as an artist and where I wanted to be. where I wanted to show my work. And I think this is it. Like, I feel like when we think about representation in the arts, I always have this battle about these fancy galleries or museums focusing on representation, yet their viewers and their audience are not, galleries and museums aren't always accessible to everyone, period, right? People just sometimes don't feel comfortable in those spaces. Or they don't have the funds. Portland Art Museum costs $25 to go. You know, there are other ways that you can get into the art museum, but not everybody knows how. They don't advertise that, you know, that you can, and it's always difficult too. Like, you can get a cultural pass from the library, but it's not easy. They have like 2, and you gotta wait for it. You know, it's ridiculous. So what is representation, and how does it matter? And who gets to see those artists represented, you know? So for me, this is awesome because everyone gets to see it, no matter what. And I really put myself and my culture and our ideas out there on these walls. So I hope, I don't know, I hope that it makes a difference somehow, or makes people happy, or people walk by and get it. They see the symbols, they see, like, oh my gosh, there's Kahlo. Why is Kahlo on the Research Center? But yeah, that's all I got for you.
How many buildings have you done artwork for?
Not that many, maybe 10?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed that majority of your work was a lot more leaning towards like the asymmetrical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be connected to your personal experience of like kind of this, I don't know, I don't know the word, but like dysphoria between the 2 cultures that you have, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe. And I still kind of think about that ikebana, you know, composition. And I really love Eastern art philosophy about negative space, and how, you know, a lot of times the artwork kind of sprawls all over. There's lots of empty spaces, you know.
Just like 2 questions. I noticed, I don't know if I like wasn't catching on, or if you said it before, but like I noticed a lot of it has to do with Hawaii, and I haven't like heard too much about the Japanese side too much.
Yeah.
Have you ever like actually like went to Japan, like where kind of like, do you have any family in Japan that you like maybe visited and like did artwork there? Or are there like artists there too, or no?
Yeah, I do have family in Japan. My brother lives in Tokyo, actually. And I try to go as often as I can, but it's far, and it takes a lot out of me to travel that far. Financially, mostly. But I haven't done art there. And you know what? The Japanese people don't really like me, and they don't believe that I'm part Japanese. Even though my last name is a very strong Japanese name, you know. But Japanese American people are a lot different than people who are born and raised in Japan.
What's it like in Tokyo, Japan?
Oh my gosh, it's so cool. You should go if you ever get
Really?
a chance.
So in your artwork that kind of speaks out about appropriation and colonization, have you received a lot of backlash about that stuff? Or any backlash? Because I know it's kind of a touchy subject for some people.
Yeah, not to my face. I mean, I don't know what people are saying behind closed doors, but I think in the arts community, a lot of people are really well educated and support those kind of conversations. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I noticed that you have a lot of tattoos. I was wondering, is there any, like, is there a lot of meaning behind what tattoos you have? Do you have, like, any story with those?
Oh, that's a funny question. I feel like all tattoos, no matter what, have a story, right? Some of them have deep meaning. Some of them do not. Like, some of them I got with some friends after a really fun night out. Some of them were mistakes. Some of them I've had covered up, But they all have a story, for sure.
Oh yeah. My other question was, do you ever think about like, because I know about because I've kind of been interested in it like ever since like it just popped up to me like when it came to Japan like the tattoo artists I heard like even though some of them kind of work with like some of the gangs to but they like make like really like nice looking artwork though when it comes to like the tattooing. Do you ever think about like studying like on some of their artwork and kind of like getting into that kind of scene like those kind of artwork?
Yeah, I love, I don't know, I feel like you can kind of see it in the aesthetics. Like, there is a little bit of that inspiration in the work. I love traditional Japanese tattoo, big time. Those waves actually are very reminiscent of Japanese tattoo style.
I noticed as well through a lot of your earlier work on like smaller fonts, the detail was a lot more constrained with the negative space. Like
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was really explosive in the
Mhm.
fact that like it came from like a point and then it really went out with a bunch of detail. Was there any particular reason for that, or was that just kind of how you were dealing with the general emotions?
Yeah, there was it. I think that I was like in a little box, and I needed to get out like this, right? Maybe I was putting too much stuff in those little prints.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I have another question about the tattoos, actually. So when you visited Japan, were you able to use hot springs?
No, they don't like me in Japan. They don't like me in Japan.
Do you know how to speak Japanese?
Skoshi.
I do not know what that
A
means.
little bit, a tiny little bit. My brother works for the Hilton in international travel. It's a pretty big wig there, right? And so he got us like VIP suites, and we could go to like the fancy restaurant and gym and all of that. But I couldn't go. So I went with my kids, and they could go, but they wouldn't let me in. They did let me into the gym, but I had to wear something that covered up my tattoos. But not all places are like that. They're changing, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about printmaking. There's do you have any recommendations for beginning like students that are excited about printmaking
Yeah.
but might not have the classes here at Clark to kind of get involved with printmaking? Any ideas or recommendations for them?
Yeah, I mean, just experimenting, you know. Is there a print studio here?
There is one printmaking class. It's
Oh,
actually in the same room as the 2D design class.
yeah,
It's kind of like a little stuff.
yeah. Just researching. Wood block printing and relief printing is a lot easier to get into. Probably a lot of you have done it when you're younger, you know, linoleum cutting and making, carving into the rubber and printing from that. If you really look for them, sometimes there's community-based free workshops. Like Apano does a lot of free workshops, art works. They just opened a really cool art space, and they're doing open studios. I'm actually doing a workshop there for free, and I'm doing wet mounting, so you can come and learn how to do this type of collaging, but on paper. And I'm sure it'll be up on the Apano website. The Reeser is doing some free workshops too. So like lots of art organizations do free workshops too. Going to artist talks, finding out those resources there, I think are really great. Is that helpful?
I'll look at the Apano website too and share.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions?
So, with the eyeless things, is that stemming from Japanese like tattoo culture?
Yeah, and other artists did it too, like a lot of artists that paint in temples or even on paper.
So I know that for tattoos, they will fill it in later,
Yeah.
kind of like a purpose in their life, or like they know where they are or a result. Do you ever see yourself like changing with those, like filling the eyes in later, or just
Yeah, I think for those specific images, I think it would, because like the snake was soulless and didn't, like, you know, he was kind of an evil thing, so I don't want to give him that. But yeah, maybe eventually.
Sorry, I just remembered something I wanted to ask. Did you, I know from what you said that you always stick to your kind of safety of like your own personal stuff. Would potentially collaborating with other people who have that kind of safety in your explanation work around that, or is it something that you purely just want to keep to yourself, your like personal collaboration?
No, I love collaboration. Like that mural I did in Milwaukee, I really collaborated with like David Harrelson and some other tribal members. We brought in some patterns from the Grand Ronde tribes into that mural. Also, there was a big blue heron, which is an important part of their culture, and that place specifically. So, yeah, I'm always open to collaboration. But yeah, I don't think I would ever do it on my own. You know what I mean?